I'm so delighted to introduce you to Janice Scholl today. I invited her to be on the Positively Living podcast to talk to you about one of those topics, the kind that can elicit awkward responses and bring up shame and frustration. The kind that's one of the number one sources of stress: money. Janice Scholl has spent her entire career talking about money and business. Through her time as a commercial banker, consultant, and mentor to budding entrepreneurs, she's helped clients create solid business and financial strategies to propel their business to success. Through her work, Janice realized that women were uncomfortable with finance, both in their business and their personal life. From this realization, the Money, Career, and Motherhood podcast was born. Now Janice spends her time helping mothers gain confidence and understanding about money, career, and business topics as they relate to motherhood and family. Janice loves helping mothers implement business and financial strategies within their families to help each family member thrive. Janice and I connected when I was a guest on her podcast. We focused on simplicity and gratitude as it relates to money. Today, we highlighted the 4 ways we interact with money: making it, managing it, growing and investing it, and our mindset and relationship with it, which is where we focus the majority of our conversation. We talk about how viewing our financial situation at home as though we were running a business can help us reduce our family's risk and take back our control. I believe this approach is especially important during economic uncertainty. While recording this, the uncertainty was mostly due to COVID-19. But this advice holds true at any time. The steps we can take to become more proactive financially will serve our families no matter what is happening in the world. Be sure to listen to the end of our conversation as we talk about the first steps you can take today to start shifting your money awareness and story. As a gift for you, Janice offers a free checklist of questions for your family to take stock of your financial status. Her podcast is also an amazing resource to keep money in the conversation and make it a proper focus in your life. For me, the most important aspect of what we discuss today is how we honor the differences in the money experience by focusing specifically on women's challenges with identity and money. Janice and I encourage you to get curious and take charge. We urge you to open your eyes and view your finances without guilt or shame. I know this is a stressful topic, which is why I wanted to cover it. I want you to know you are not alone, and we get it, and we are here to support you. It's time to be proactive. Money is no longer something that happens to you. Let it be something you make happen. You're listening to the Positively Living podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zaratny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a coach certified in time and stress management, helping clients make space for what matters most in their lives. Join me each episode and we'll talk about decluttering, stress management, habits, personalized productivity, gratitude, and so much more. I understand the overwhelm of life because I'm a wife, mom to kids and cats, and a former caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. Welcome, Janice Scholl, to the Positively Living podcast.
I'm so happy to be here.
I was honored to be your guest on your podcast. That's the Money, Career, and Motherhood podcast. And as soon as we talked, I knew this is a fellow boss mom that I want to connect with. And I definitely wanted to have you on today because I love your gentle and encouraging way that you help us, get into the money conversation that I think that we need to have. And I would love if you would share a bit in your own words about who you are, who you help, and what lights you up.
Yep. So my name is Janice Scholl, as you mentioned, and I recently launched the Money, Career, and Motherhood podcast. And, my journey through all of those 3 things has, been rocky and wonderful and challenging. And so I really want to share kind of the information and the experiences I've had and help women develop a healthier relationship and really change the conversation about motherhood and money, because I find that, too often we don't want the conversation to be about money, but in avoiding that conversation, we're actually making the impact of money stronger on our life. And it's adding to the already stressful days and lifestyles that we have, whether we're working or we're not working. So I have 2 kids at home. I have a husband as well, and we live in Tennessee. We've been here for about 2 years. We've done things a little different than some other people. So I worked in a traditional corporate American job for 10 years, and then we moved overseas. We lived in 2 different countries, and then we relocated back to Tennessee. So I've done the working professional mom, I've been a stay-at-home mom, I've been an expat mom, and I've been a business owner mom. So I've kind of seen a lot of different things. And my background has always been in finance and business. So that's the approach that I take when I work with my clients.
And you've really had a global view of it because of all these different experiences being in and out of the country.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it really, motherhood, to me, motherhood has been an incredible challenge and an incredible gift for obviously lots of reasons. But one of them is because we would never have gone overseas if we weren't presented with the challenges that we faced with our first child. She really empowered us to do things different. And so what I do today, it also empowers me to have difficult conversations with women from a point of non-judgment, because that's what I needed at the time when I was experiencing it. And it's just launched us into a whole different phase of life, I think.
Oh, that's amazing. So I'd love to get into a bit about the relationship as it stands, or the challenging relationship that we as women maybe tend to have, or what you've seen. I know, for myself, that the challenges that I've had with the money conversation and how we handle money and stuff, but I would love for you to speak to that a bit.
Yeah, so money is so big. And when I talk about money, I include career as well, because I think that the push and pull of career as a mother is part of that whole dialogue. But so I really break down money into different areas. And the first thing I want to tell people is that no one is good at all areas of money. My whole career has been in it. My husband's in finance as well. And there are areas of money that are challenging for us. So, the first thing is making money. And we're well versed in that. We learn about making money from the time that we go into kindergarten, and people are asking us what we want to be when we grow up. And we understand from then that one day we're going to have a career, and that's going to support our life. The next phase is the money management. This is what people think about when they think about a household and money. And that's making sure we pay our bills on time, making sure we have enough to pay our bills on time, understanding what our cash needs are going to be in the future. The next stage is growing the money, which is, am I going to start a business? Am I going to invest my money? How am I going to take these resources, save these resources, and make them grow for our future? And then there's the mindset. Money mindset umbrellas all of those, right? And that's the area that I focus on the most, because I've come to the realization that you can be good at all of the other 3. And if your mindset isn't right, you're still not happy. And where I come from is, my introduction to motherhood was at a time when I was thriving in my career and I was going to grad school, and we had a plan for the way things were going to work. And then we were presented with a challenge, and it shook my identity so much, because I didn't have a healthy relationship with myself separate from my career. And so to be able to make the decisions in how to proceed and how to figure out where to go next personally was really, really tough. So, we were great at money management. We had been great savers. We were making income. We were perfectly fine with that piece. We had long-term goals, but it was the mindset piece that was the most challenging, and it just flowed into every other area.
Yeah, I can see that definitely. And as you're describing like each of these components, so, the making money, and I remember, didn't you recently in your, on social media post something about that, how the conversation is always there, like, what are you going to do when you grow up? Right. And like, it's this idea of we're always thinking in terms of how are we going to make money and what are we going to do? And that making money part, I feel like that's covered,
Yes, it's
right?
it's covered, and I feel like to some extent, especially right now with the way the world of work is changing,
Yeah.
we might be a little too focused on it, right? Because that's our identity. When we teach kids from the time they start school until the time they graduate that their whole academic career is designed to help them get a good job so that
Yes.
they can make a paycheck. And
Yep.
so, for mothers, it's really complicated because most of us go through our academic life looking for ways to maximize our professional opportunities, and then sometimes we take detours, and there are things that we do outside of career or in direct conflict with the linear path we expected for our career, but they're for the benefit of our family and our personal well-being. And so but we don't talk about that for decades, really.
Hmm. Yeah, and I like so much that you brought up that concept of identity. I think that that's something we need to consider always, that so much is tied up in that. It's tied up in our career potentially. I see that for men and women, and I see it in different ways. And then there's also this aspect of deciding to change your identity or having those multiple aspects of your identity. And I think we as moms experience that so much, and that tug and pull that we
Yeah.
experience, right?
Yeah, something that like kind of just dawned on me recently is that, we talk a lot about work-life balance, right? And we're all seeking for that perfect work-life balance. And Lord knows I have tried hard to find the right place for that, but I've come to the realization that it's really a tug of war for me.
Hmm.
It- and it is when I am a stay-at-home mom, and it is when I am a professional mom, because I have a professional identity, because that is a part of who I am. Even when I'm focused on my family fully, I need to have a balance in both areas. But it
Yes.
always feels like I'm not enough in one area
That
because we need so much in every area.
Yeah, and that not enoughness, that's a whole aspect of what I coach, and feeling that. And one of the ways that I'm starting to describe it is this idea that we need to be able to very, I don't know that the word is calmly, but that we need to be able to accept that it does require alternating, going back and
Yes.
forth. So, but the tug and pull is a very real thing. And I think being able to like surf through that a bit and understand that it's going to be a back and forth can hopefully ease some of that. But you're right, there feels like there's so much demand on all sides that it can feel like that tug. But yeah, so the making money part, the money management, of course, with the budgeting, and how we're using what it is that we have and growing it, all those things are there. But then that mindset, I know that when I was trying to get better at this entrepreneur world that I'm in, and seeking different things that I could learn, money mindset became this new topic for me. And the realization came to me that it doesn't matter how much money I make if I don't believe I can get past a certain point with it, or I don't understand what I'm trying to do with it, or like just really kind of getting in deeper. So is that
Yes.
where you go with this?
That's exactly it. And I like to ask the question, is money something that you make happen, or is money something that happens to you?
Oh, that's good.
Because we all seek control in our lives, and money often feels like something that's uncontrollable. We're driven by our careers. It feels like life is something that started happening around our career, right? that's
Mhm.
the that's the grounding, that's the foundation for so many of us. So then we find ways to fit in our family and to fit in ourselves outside of the work time. And let's be honest, we don't get there very often. That's why we talk about self-care so much, because we can't get there. So I feel like recognizing the pull is really important, because once you recognize it's there, it's not to complain about it. It's not to be disappointed in it. It's to then recognize it and make decisions about it.
Yes.
So until we can recognize that this is a fact of life, we can't move beyond it. And with money, so many times I find that women don't want money to be the focus of their family, so they ignore it. But I argue that you really need to understand the game. You need to understand how the world works, how money is used as a tool, because it's only by understanding it and accepting it that you can release money's hold over your life.
Hmm. Yeah, when you understand it, I've often said when we identify things and when we speak them out loud, we can frequently take away the power we feel like it has over us. Sometimes even when you admit, I'm struggling with this, I'm frustrated by it, I don't quite know what I'm doing with it. When you put that out there, that's when you allow help to come, allow healing to
Absolutely.
come, right?
Absolutely. Recognizing that there's areas that you feel like you need help,
Hmm.
and recognizing that you don't have all the answers, to me is really empowering, because it's, there's the story that we tell ourselves about the judgment others are placing on us. There's the reality about the judgment that others are placing on us. But then there's the reality of what we're talking to ourselves like, right?
Yes.
And for all of us, I think that that's the most enlightening, is that sometimes it's not the outside world pushing in. Don't get me wrong. Our consumer society is built on scarcity mindset.
Hmm.
And this goes back to the whole, you need to understand the game, because the world is built on us feeling like we don't have enough. And it's making us use our money in ways that are not best served for us and our family, because we're trying to fill that void.
Yes.
So I get that, but we just have to accept and recognize and find a way to use it.
Yeah. So again, you use that word enough, and I want to bring that up for everyone listening. That is what happens in essentially consumer society. You're right. As every business that's out there, the point of the business is to sell things, to sell products, and it's frequently based on having you understand, they're hoping you understand, that is to say, that you need this. And it can frequently come from that feeling of you're not enough. You won't be this until you have this product or you do this thing. And yeah, there's so much connection that comes outward. But then yes, the inward side is so important too. And one of the things that I was curious about, I'm sure you've seen this with clients, is going into family of origin. What were we taught growing up about
Yes.
money? What are the phrases that come up? Would you speak to that a little, please?
Yeah. So, and this is something, as I mentioned, my whole career has been talking about money and business, and, understanding the influence of your family on your money beliefs has just been something that I've been learning about in the last year. And Deborah Price of the Money Coaching Institute is amazing for understanding your archetype, for what you believe and why with money. And it always stems back to your childhood,
Mhm.
because the beliefs are things that we tell ourselves over and over again. And we didn't have the opportunity to challenge the beliefs about money as a child.
Mhm.
We just experienced them as they flowed through our parents. So, there's plenty of families where we have incredibly hard work ethics. And this is my family. Like, we believe in a very strong work ethic. And I still think that this is very important. But, at times when money flows to people who have that work ethic and you don't feel like you're working hard enough, it's a way that you can get that feeling of like, well, wait a minute, what am I doing? Like, people are believing that I'm doing more than I am, and this is easy for me, so I shouldn't be making this money. And then
Hmm.
and then you experience imposter syndrome, or you experience self-sabotage, where you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm charging too much. We don't recognize our gifts, and that it flows easily to us sometimes when we have that strong money is hard to get mindset. So that's one example of a way that money belief can affect the way that you engage with it as an adult without recognizing it. Of
Absolutely.
course, families who experienced a lack of money growing up
Mm-hmm.
and that extreme scarcity mindset for very good reason has a completely different impact on the way an adult may engage with money going forward. But never having that feeling that we have enough can come from genuine times of not having enough.
Sure. I mean, scarcity mindset is a real thing because there was a time that you experienced scarcity, but it's the not being able to release that and trust that there can be a different kind of future, a different kind of change that can challenge that situation. And we also hear phrases. I probably talk about these often, things like money doesn't grow on trees, and you know what I mean, right? Different kinds of
Yeah,
phrases that we hear. What about the relationship that we as women, and I say this, you know, again, it may be a generalization, but I think it's there with a purpose. I think that I've seen it enough in those that I coach, and of course myself, that we are frequently of service to others, and we do give, and we are generous. And I think there's this relationship there with, well, but I'm not in it for the money. I don't do it for the money. Do you see that quite a bit?
absolutely. So, and you know, one of the places I see it the most are from successful women
Mm,
because it's really hard to break through that. So in my podcast, I ask every guest one question to normalize the fact that we all have areas of money that we need to work on. And for the women business owners, often it is recognizing their worth because they feel like they do it for the purpose and they do it to be of service. And so it is incredibly hard to charge when you are so passionate about helping others
hmm
and feel like you and then it's magnified when you feel like it's easy to do the work that you're doing that actually helps people. So many women say that that's the area that they struggle with is pricing, is selling their service or marketing it for a profit because they just want to help as many people and continue to be of service. And I believe that there's an expectation in our culture of women and mothers to be of service. And it's complicated because, you know, we're taught from a young age that we're going to grow up and we're going to have careers. And that's how we're valued in society.
hmm
But some women, we don't have careers, but we're valuable contributors. We're sustaining life, we're helping our family, we are doing so much good in our community.
hmm
But then on the other side, you know, we shouldn't make too much. We shouldn't make too much because if we're making too much, we're probably neglectful. This is society, the pressure that many of us feel that we're neglectful in a different area. So, you know, if we don't have a career, we feel guilty. And if we do have a career and it's too good, we feel guilty.
Right. Yeah, that's the rock and a hard place there. And then there's the aspects of career and, you know, what women are generally paid, you know, cents on
Yes.
the dollar compared to men. And there's all of these challenges. And then it goes back again to the tug and pull and the expectations of, you know, where you are in terms of your identity. And I've often enjoyed looking at what I do as a mom in our household. And I've done it all. I've been in the corporate world, and I've done the, you know, the business ownership side, and in, you know, everything in between. And when you start to calculate things and act like it were a business, you do see that value. But it's a shame to me that we can't inherently see the value without constantly bringing it back to the actual dollars and cents.
Well, and there's something that that was the perfect segue because I
Good.
want to talk about the fact that our households are businesses, whether we know it or whether we like it or not.
Good.
So, you know, whether a mother is working at home with her family without a paycheck or she is working outside of the house, you know, what we need to understand about society and about the world of employment is that the burden of risk has shifted. It has shifted from large corporations and it has moved over to us as individuals and therefore to our families. You know, we in decades past, pensions were very common things that people had to rely on
hmm
to sustain them into retirement. employment, you stayed at a company much longer. You did not jump careers. If you did jump companies, that was a big deal, but you didn't jump careers. And now we jump companies, we jump careers, we do everything different. And so I want people to understand that we are acting in an entrepreneurial way, and we are acting like business owners of our families, whether we recognize it or not. So, understanding that your household is a business, understanding that you hold the risk, and then creating that system in place just as a business would do to help you make decisions. One of the things that I've experienced, and that the mothers I'm talking to are experiencing, is it's so hard to make decisions in uncertainty. But it's because sometimes we don't limit ourselves with a structure or a framework to answer those questions and to recognize the resources that we have or that we need and how to get those. And so, I really want everyone to recognize that our households are businesses. We have risk. It is inherent in everything that we do. Every paycheck that we get is not secure as it used to be. And we need to constantly be looking at, hey, how do I make sure that my business is running well so that I don't have to think about money every day?
Right. And this is so important because you hear more and more, and this was even before. Right now, you and I are recording this while we are still in the thick of COVID-19 and the impacts that it has on that. And I'll tell you right now, one of the biggest reasons I wanted to have this conversation is because money is one of the biggest stressors. I mean, I'm sure you've probably seen a ton of studies that have been done. I just did a stress management episode about this, and money and employment, they're like on the top of the list, and I don't think they ever go away in terms of being stressors. And now we're experiencing it even more. And so often I'm hearing, about people who are being let go from their jobs. And understandably, I understand what's happening with companies where they can't keep people on. But at the same time, there was this hope that there would be this loyalty. And like you said, now that's a good way to put it. The risk has shifted to the family. And so with that risk means the responsibility for us to say, okay, we're steering this vehicle now. So what steps, what would that structure look like? Or what would some of those decisions or steps that we could take look like?
So the first thing I want everyone to recognize is that, you have to take a step back and separate the emotion from what's going on. So the best time to do this, we are in the throes of COVID-19. We are trying to figure out what the fall is going to look like. So I know that it's really difficult to take the emotion out of it. It's impossible, but you need to ask yourself some questions about the emotion piece and set aside what you want, the outcome that you want, because often the outcome that you want is not possible in the short term. And so we focus a lot of our resources and our energy on trying to get things that we can't have. Okay. So we need to ask ourselves, if we are employed today, we should be asking ourselves, what threat is there to our income? I look at it, and so I worked in a bank for 10 years on the commercial side. So we look at, what's the probability of something going wrong? Mm-hmm. And what's the loss if that happens? And then we look at different categories of risk. So for individual decisions that people make, and I use this framework to everything that I do, from whether or not I'm going to let my kids engage in an activity to, what my husband and I are going to do with our income generating resources. You mm-hmm. can apply it to any way, because the first question is, what's the probability of things going wrong? Right now, there's a probability that many of us can lose our jobs through this. We don't have a lot of certainty around it, right? We don't really know. And one thing I also want to throw out there is, culturally, we have this belief that we're just being negative if we're not optimistic. Mm. And I believe that it's not the best time to be overly optimistic. That does not mean that you have to be super negative and that you've got to just worry all the time. I believe now is a time for a plan. So in the perfect world, you won't use the plan. But if we ignore the possibility of something going wrong, we're going to be blindsided.
Yeah.
So looking at your employment, what's the probability that that employment source could dry up? Are you a single income family? Do you have a spouse who works also? Because a single income family has a lot higher risk if something goes wrong. So then that's the what happens if it goes wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're a single income family and the single income goes away, you have no income.
Right.
That means now you need to build a foundation, a financial foundation that is stronger than the family that does have two incomes and happens to be working in two different industries. That's applying a business methodology to decide how much risk can your family take and what type of foundation do you need from a financial standpoint to be able to live the life that you want. Because the goal is to make sure that if someone loses their job, that you have enough to do what you need to do to support your family.
Right.
And then the next question is, how likely is it that you're going to get a new job? We know through COVID, and COVID is super different than every other, economic recession that we've ever experienced. However, there are certain industries that are cyclical and are affected every time we do go into a recession. And
Mm-hmm.
so, asking yourself the question, what does my skill set do in the world of work? How valued am I? How likely is it that I would be picked up right now in the event that I do lose my job? These are the kinds of questions that we need to ask. And, for the mothers out there, understanding the uncertainty of what fall looks like with schools, we don't know right now if our kids, if they even do go back full-time in person, we don't know how long that will last. It's very possible that the schools will have to close again and that they will be learning remote. And none of us want that, right? We all want our kids to be able to go back to school in the fall and have a traditional, like totally normal school year. But hoping is not going to help us if we find out 2 weeks in our kids are home and now we're trying to figure out how to work at home again with our kids. So we were all blindsided when everything happened in March,
Mm-hmm.
but I want people to start thinking about, okay, well, what could happen next? We can still hope it's not gonna, but what could happen next? And then what do I need to build at home in order for us to be successful at what we deem is important? And then that's, another business opportunity is recognizing that our resources are limited. I say on one hand, you shouldn't have a scarcity mindset, but on the other hand, your resources are limited. And what I mean by that is we can't have everything we want at the same time. And recognizing that our resources are scarce is allowing us to make decisions about where we filter those resources to, what we fund with those resources. And it's, when I talk to people about budgeting, I talk a lot about if you're budgeting and it feels like a restrictor, you're doing something wrong, because it should be an enabler. It should be, yes, it does mean that you can't spend in some areas, and that's in both time and in money, but it should be towards a goal that you value and is important to you. So that's kind of the questions that I want people to start asking. And that's the first step, is really questioning, not to be just receiving the information we're getting and say, what's going to happen next? Receive the information, analyze the probability, and then make a plan for how you're going to react for those situations.
Yeah, I love that, because what you're describing here, if you've heard corporations refer to risk management, that's what we need to do for ourselves. And what you pointed out about, it's not always the time to be overly optimistic. And I'd love to speak to that, because I'm known, as Positively Lisa, and I do believe in positivity, but I think there's a huge distinction between being optimistic to the point where you are ignoring signs and concerns and potential pitfalls. The whole idea of being productive and planning and doing these things is to set you up for success and to help you be resilient. So
Yes,
Janice, what you were saying is so important to say, consider, and it would be wonderful. It's what prepare for the worst, hope for the best, right?
exactly.
And keeping this in mind, the other thing too is that any of this preparation, getting clear on simply taking stock of what you have right now, asking these questions, taking inventory, knowing what your money situation is, and starting to think, is this job that I have fairly stable, or could this really be impacted? Starting to think in those terms, even if nothing happens, it's still a really important exercise for you because it gets you in that frame of mind of making these adjustments and preparing. And then what if you prepare and you didn't need to? That's not going to be a waste. There's always another way that you can, if you saved money, let's say, or, it allows you to keep bouncing back and forth to those categories that you mentioned, the making money and money management, and being able to touch upon each of those. And the scarcity mindset idea, when we talk about scarcity, it means constantly believing you don't have enough. I think there's a difference between that and saying, okay, there's a limitation of something here. I mean, right now, for us, for the longest time, it was toilet paper for whatever reason. And so understanding that, every time you went shopping or, you needed to consider what your resources were. Maybe you went to a different store, you just started to make adjustments. It doesn't mean that you'll never find it again. It means that you're making adjustments so that you can serve your family.
Yeah, and it's
Right?
really, yeah, it's serving your family from a position of non-attachment to certain things, because
Yes.
you can't control the outcome, but and we all have dealt with a lot of stress in different ways in our households lately. And I tell my kids, and we're doing it too, like
Mm-hmm.
we all have our moments here, but I tell my kids, we can only control what happens within this house.
Yes.
We can sit and we can be upset about the things that we miss right now, but wouldn't you rather focus on the things that we can actually do within our boundaries that have been built that we don't control?
Right.
And if everyone wants to access, I have a kind of question list that you can go through with your spouse,
Mm-hmm.
or if you're single, you can go through it by yourself just to answer the questions to help you kind of risk assess your financial situation. And I had created this well before COVID had started, because I think it's something, the beauty is that you can do this at any time, and it only makes you stronger for every moment that comes after, because we all know that there's more uncertainty in our lives than what we would like to plan
Yeah.
for,
I mean,
but it's
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So I'd love to share that with your audience. And then,
Wonderful.
for everybody, just start tracking your expenses, because I know there's somebody out there who's saying, okay, well, that's great. I hear you, but I still don't really know exactly what to do. Like, what's that tangible thing? And start tracking your expenses. And what I don't mean is look at your credit card bill each month and see how much you spent. I mean, write down from receipts the category of spending that you are in, because I know I'm not the only mom who goes to Target and shops in every single category of expenses. It's kind of an abyss. Amazon and Target, to me, like, I can't remember a week after what I spent and why.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do that. And there are things, once we look at where our money is going, again, we can make decisions about whether or not that supports our goals. And I can tell you that pretty much everyone, when they recognize where their money is going, if they're not tracking it, finds places to say, hey, wait a minute, this is not aligned with what I want to do for my family. And this goes down to, I call it value-based budgeting, because in a perfect world, you will know what you value, and your time and your money will align with that. We talk a lot about aligning our time, not just spending all of our time at work, and making sure that we're being present with our families and things like that. But I'd argue that we need to look at our finances the same way. and make sure that our finance supports our family.
Oh, I agree. And I mean, there's the saying, that you show me your values by showing me, your calendar and your checkbook, where
Exactly.
is that time and that money flowing? And I think that they are both so connected. In my time management episode, the first thing that I say is track. That's part
Yes.
of the, taking time management to task, is to track. It's inventorying. So those are really, I think, the first steps we can do today is to take a look at our situation, consider the risk. You have a checklist. I'll definitely make sure we have that in the show notes, to start asking these questions and to start tracking. And I think this is so important, and I know you feel this, so I feel like I can speak on your behalf when I say, when we're tracking, this is not judgment time. This is not right. This is not,
Yes.
and please, when we say take the emotion out of it, we mean take the shame out of it, take the
Yeah.
guilt, any of that. It's really coming to understand where
Yeah.
the money's going, what's going on, and then you can course correct if you feel the need, right?
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
the shame piece is so important. And it is what keeps so many of us mothers from building the community and getting the support that we need. And, I mentioned the early days of my daughter's childhood and, you know, judgment for me was debilitating.
Mm.
It was incredibly hard because we were dealing with things that, they were invisible to everyone on the outside. They couldn't see what medical challenges she was dealing with and what we were trying to do, because it was just not something that people were familiar with. And I made a decision at some point that I wasn't going to let the judgment control me, because I was so fearful of what people thought and what they were saying. There were genuinely people who were judging me at that time. And just making a conscious decision to not judge. So I sat there, and every time I felt being judged, I said to myself, I will not do this to another mother.
Yes.
I will approach my interactions assuming that we all want what's best for our family. We do not know what happens out inside the household of someone else. And we will just assume that every mother is doing what the best that they can with the resources that they have. And so if you set that mindset for yourself, I think it's easier to walk away from the shame. Like, there's plenty of things I still do that I'm shameful. Like, I feel shame
Hmm.
and I feel judged, or I'm worried about judgment. But man, it was a big limiter before, and it is liberating to have that change in mindset. Because again, I can't control what somebody else is going to judge me for,
You
but I
cannot,
can
no.
control what I am going to do and how I am going to handle my relationship with other mothers.
Yes. And one of the best ways that we can liberate ourselves in this fashion is by sticking together. And this is the perfect segue into saying, this is why I wanted to have you on the podcast and to talk with you today, because keep in touch with Janice. If this is a concern for you, reach out to her. She is an amazing resource. I will make sure to have links to everything so that you can find her. We'll talk about that in a minute, but we need to stick together. We need to keep having this conversation, easy for me to say, and we need to keep supporting each other and really defaulting to that belief, not only for each other, but for ourselves, that we are doing the very best we can with what we know.
Exactly.
Yeah, love it. Okay, this is the perfect time to go into the rapid wrap up and have a little bit of fun and a little inspiration together. So, my first question for you, if you would fill in the blank, is the song that always makes me dance is?
So it's not what everyone's going to think, but my kids love it and I love it together. So it's Revolution 909 by Daft Punk. We are Daft Punk junkies in this family. Never listened to it before my kids, but they have totally turned me on to
Okay, that's fantastic. And you're right. I wasn't expecting that. I was probably going to
it.
go with money, money, money.
Nope. Nope.
So,
Just
no, that's awesome. Okay. Now, how about the quote or the mantra that I use or I share most often is?
a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor.
Ooh.
Franklin D. Roosevelt said that one. And, life is a series of challenges, and I have to constantly remind myself that they are just preparing me for what's to come.
A smooth sea never made
A skilled
a
sailor.
skilled. sailor. I love that. I'm writing it down. I'm going to take that to heart. I think that's a wonderful reminder for 2020, whenever you're listening to this podcast, that we are becoming much more skilled sailors. Thank you.
That's right.
Okay. And then one of my biggest life lessons came from, this could be an event or a person.
So, I kind of talked about it through all of this, and they came from my daughter. And, we have these ideas of what we're good at and what we're not good at. And my experience with her made me realize that we don't know ourselves as well as we think we do. And we can overcome and accomplish and adapt so much more. We're so much more resilient than what we realize. And that's when I alluded to, we moved overseas because of my experience with motherhood, that I realized I was so much more agile and adaptable because I had done it before. Yeah. And I constantly remind myself as I try to do hard things, because in our family we say, we're up for the challenge. Can't say we're gonna succeed, but we are up for the challenge. We're gonna try and we're gonna learn.
That's all you can do. Love that. Okay, and lastly, what or whom are you grateful for today?
I am grateful for you, because I love the positivity and the gratitude that you bring into your podcast and into the way that you run your business. And I've seen what gratitude does for my family and the positive impact. And so I'm truly grateful that you're sharing that. Gratitude itself can be liberating.
It certainly can. And you and I will have a separate conversation about this, whether it's going to be on the podcast or I'll have you in the Positively Grateful series community. We're definitely having a conversation about that as well. Thank you. And I'm so grateful for you, Janice. So online, you mentioned having the checklist. So we'll make sure to have a link to that. And of course, I highly recommend everyone go and listen to your Money, Career, and Motherhood podcast. Right. And that is where you have so much good information. And you're talking about so much of what we discussed today and so much more. You have amazing guests on there, not to, not to brag. I'm one of them, but,
Yep.
I mean.
And on July 21st is when Lisa's episode will air. So please take a listen. It is excellent. And as always, she's grateful. She's full of non-judgment. She's positive, and she's giving actionable tips. So it's perfect. I love it.
Thank you. And that's exactly what you did today. So thank you for that. Make sure, everyone, that you check out Janice wherever she is online. I'll link to those notes. And thank you, Janice, for shining your light in this world and for sharing it with us. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Rarely in our life is money a place of genuine freedom, joy, or clarity. Yet we routinely allow it to dictate the terms of our lives, and often to be the single most important factor in the decisions we make about work, love, family, and friendship. Lynn Twist. Thank you for joining me on the Positively Living podcast. Your time is precious, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. If you'd like more information on today's show, you can find a link to the show notes on positivelyproductive.com/podcast. If you found value in the show, please click subscribe, and even better, give a quick review on iTunes. It supports me and will help others find the show. If you'd like more positive content, come join me on social media. Positively Productive on Facebook and positively_Lisa on Instagram. Get ready for kids, cats, and all my quirky humor over there. I look forward to having you join me next episode. Until then, keep it positive and keep making space for what matters most.